214 people were laughing. One man was not. He stood at the edge of the ballroom with a glass of water in his hand and a crooked blue tie his son had knotted for him 2 hours earlier. On the stage, a voice on the microphone was still talking, still squeezing the room for one more laugh at the man who taught woodshop at a public high school. Then a chair scraped. A woman at the VIP table pushed back from the white linen and stood. She stepped onto the marble floor and walked. Not around the tables, not along the wall, straight through the center of the crowd. Everyone mocked the single dad at the reunion, until a billionaire walked across the crowd to him. Her heels stopped 3 feet from his chest. The laughter died mid-breath. What did she know about this man that 200 people in that room did not? Stay close on this one. The answer is going to change everything. 3 days earlier, on a Thursday afternoon in Durham, North Carolina, Ben Cooper stood in front of a table saw with sawdust on his forearms and a pencil behind his ear. He was showing a group of 10th graders how to measure twice before cutting once, and every time one of them forgot, he did not raise his voice. He just held up the ruined piece of pine and said the same thing he always said. Wood doesn't give you a second chance. But I will. Measure again. The bell rang at 3:15. Ben wiped down his station, locked the shop, and drove his 11-year-old Ford pickup across town to Eastway Elementary. Sam was waiting on the front steps with his backpack hanging off one shoulder and something tucked under his arm. When Ben pulled up and pushed the passenger door open, the boy climbed in and held up a paper airplane. White notebook paper, sharp folds, one wing slightly longer than the other on purpose. This one's got a curve, Sam said. Watch. He launched it from the dashboard. It caught the air from the open window and arced left before nosing into the seat. Not bad, Ben said. He picked it up, creased the nose tighter, and handed it back. Try again after dinner. They drove home. Ben made spaghetti. Sam sat at the kitchen table doing math homework while the water boiled, and when the steam fogged the window, he drew a smiley face in it with his finger. They ate at the same table they ate at every night. 2 plates, 2 glasses of milk, a jar of Parmesan between them. It was quiet. It had been quiet for 4 years, since the accident, and by now the quiet had stopped being painful and started being just the shape of their evenings. At 8, Ben's phone buzzed. Frank Jessup's name on the screen. Reunion Saturday, Frank said without a greeting. 15 years. You're coming. I don't think so. I've asked 3 times, Ben. That's my limit. After this I stop being polite and start showing up at your door. Ben looked at the ceiling. Fine. Fine as in yes. Fine as in I'll show up. I'll shake some hands. I'll leave before dessert. That's all I'm asking. 6 miles away, on the other side of Durham, a black rental sedan pulled into the parking garage of the Marriott near campus. Hannah Porter stepped out carrying a single leather bag and a laptop case. She did not wait for anyone to open her door. At the front desk, she declined the upgrade, asked for a room with a coffee maker, and told her assistant on the phone that she would walk to the university in the morning. No car service. No driver. She wanted to see the town on foot. Friday morning, 8:15. Ben stopped at the coffee shop on Broad Street, 2 blocks from campus, the way he did every morning before school. He ordered black coffee, sat at a table near the window, and scrolled through nothing on his phone. A woman was sitting at the corner table, dark hair pulled back, reading a journal with a pale blue cover, the kind of journal that had equations on the back. She did not look up. When Ben stood to leave, his wallet slid off his lap and hit the floor. He did not notice. He was 3 steps toward the door when her voice caught him. Hey, you dropped this. He turned. She was holding the brown leather wallet out, arm extended, eyes on his. He walked back. Thank you, he said. She nodded. Her eyes went briefly to his hands, calloused, scarred across the knuckles, a builder's hands. He noticed the journal in her lap, Structural Engineering, Volume 41. An unusual thing for a stranger in a coffee shop to be reading. Neither of them said anything else. He took the wallet, nodded, and walked out into the morning light. She watched the door close behind him, then turned back to her journal. Friday at noon, Ben drove to campus to pick up his reunion registration packet. Frank was waiting in the lobby of the Alumni Center, wearing a blazer that still fit and a nervous expression that did not. They hugged, the kind of hug between 2 men who had shared a dorm room for 4 years and had not needed to explain themselves since. You actually came, Frank said. I said I would. Frank walked with him to the registration table. Ben clipped the badge to his shirt pocket without reading it. Frank read it. He read it twice. Ben Cooper, Durham High School, shop teacher. 10 words. That was who his best friend was to this building now. When Ben went to the restroom, Frank stood alone in the lobby. On the far wall, the Alumni Center had mounted a row of photographs. Every class's most decorated graduates. Frank's eyes moved down the row until they stopped on one. A younger Ben Cooper, 22, holding a glass trophy etched with the words Vanguard Fellowship, outstanding contribution to structural engineering. Frank took out his phone. He did not need to search. He had the article bookmarked, had kept it for 7 years because no one else seemed to remember. The headline was from an engineering trade publication dated 2018. Meridian Aerospace Engineer identifies fatal structural defect in Vanguard Bridge. Estimated 400 lives at risk. The photo showed Ben in a dark suit, standing beside a scale model of the bridge, pointing to a joint that nobody else had thought to check. He had found a stress fracture in a load-bearing node that every automated test had cleared. He found it by hand. He found it because he did not trust the software, and he was right. Below that article was another, dated 4 years later. Meridian Aerospace eliminates Advanced Projects Division amid corporate restructuring. No photo. No quote from Ben Cooper. Just a paragraph about cost-cutting and a list of divisions dissolved. Frank closed his phone. He looked at the badge in his hand, his own badge, which read Frank Jessup, Project Manager, Tatum Engineering. Then he looked at the wall, at the trophy, at the young man in the photograph who had once saved 400 lives and was now teaching teenagers how to use a table saw. Ben came back. Ready? Frank put his phone away. Yeah, let's go. Outside, crossing the main quad, Ben saw her again. The woman from the coffee shop. She was walking the same direction, coming from the east side of campus, wearing a gray coat and carrying a folder. She noticed him at the same moment he noticed her. Coffee shop, she said. The wallet guy, he said. They walked together for a while, not by plan, just because the path went the same way. She asked if he had gone to school here. He said yes, a long time ago. She said the campus looked different from what she remembered seeing in photographs. He said the oak trees along the quad were the same, the only thing that did not change. When the path forked, she went left toward the hotel. He went right toward the parking lot. He glanced back. She did not. Back in the Alumni Center lobby, Frank was still standing near the wall of photographs. But he was not looking at the photographs anymore. He was looking at the donor board posted beside the reunion schedule, a list of the university's major benefactors for the current year. Halfway down the list, printed in gold, was a name. Porter Ventures. The same name that had acquired the operational contract for the Vanguard Bridge in 2019. The same bridge Ben had saved. Frank stared at the name. He did not know what the woman in the gray coat looked like. He did not know she had just walked across the quad with his best friend. But something about that name, Porter Ventures, lodged itself in his chest like a question he could not yet form. Friday evening. The welcome mixer. The Alumni Center ballroom was lit amber, and the tables were draped in the school's colors, and the bar was open, and every surface held a name badge or a glass of wine or both. Greg Loomis arrived at 6:30 in a 3-piece charcoal suit with a watch that caught the light every time he moved his wrist. He shook hands like a man running for office. Firm grip, eye contact, a compliment for everyone that was really a way of reminding them what he had accomplished. Greg took the microphone at 7. He welcomed the class. He talked about how far they had all come. Then he began calling out names, one at a time, the way an auctioneer calls bids. Dr. Sarah Kessler, Chief of Cardiology at Duke Medical. Applause. Amy Fulton, VP at Deloitte, running the Southeast Division. More applause. He went down the list, each name a little louder, each title a little shinier. Then he saw Ben, standing near the far wall, talking quietly with Frank. Ben Cooper, Greg called out, grinning. Man, haven't seen you in years. Get up here. Ben walked to the front. He was wearing a button-down shirt, no blazer, sleeves rolled to the elbows. He looked like a man who had come straight from work, because he had. Greg put an arm around his shoulder and turned to the crowd. Ben's teaching shop class over at Durham High these days, showing the kids how to sand wood and cut straight lines. He paused for timing. Somebody's got to do it, right? The room laughed. Not cruel, not sharp, Just the comfortable, reflexive laughter of people who were glad they were not the one being introduced that way. Ben smiled. A small, even smile that did not reach his eyes. He stepped down from the riser, and as he passed Frank, he saw his friend's jaw clenched so tight the muscle was jumping. "Don't," Ben said quietly. One word. Frank swallowed and looked away. On the other side of a glass partition, in the adjacent banquet room, the university was hosting a separate dinner for its board donors. Hannah Porter sat at a round table with the provost and 2 department chairs. She was listening politely when her eyes drifted through the glass wall to the mixer next door. She could not hear what was being said, but she saw the crowd, the microphone, the man in the rolled sleeves stepping down from the riser. She recognized his walk, the same unhurried stride from the coffee shop, the campus path, the dropped wallet. She set her glass down and watched him disappear into the crowd. Later, when both dinners ended and the dividing wall opened, the 2 rooms merged into one. Hannah stood at the bar, waiting for a glass of water. Ben was already there, doing the same thing. He spoke first. "We keep running into each other." "Small campus," she said. A beat. Then he extended his hand. "Ben." She took it. "Hannah." No last names. No titles. Just 2 syllables each, offered the same way, simply, without decoration. Around them, the room was loud. Between them, for 3 seconds, it was not. Greg appeared at Ben's shoulder, drink in hand, smile already loaded. He leaned past Ben and extended his hand to Hannah. "Greg Loomis. I put this whole thing together." He launched into his pitch, the real estate firm, the number of developments, the square footage. Hannah listened the way a person listens to an airport announcement they have already heard. She nodded once. She did not ask a follow-up question. When Greg paused for breath, she turned back to Ben. "It was nice meeting you, Ben." "You too, Hannah." Greg stood between them holding his drink, and for the first time all evening, no one was looking at him. Saturday morning. October light came through the windows of Ben's kitchen at a low angle, catching the dust above the stove. Sam was already dressed, sitting at the table with a piece of toast and a new sheet of paper, folding. "Where are we going?" Sam asked. "Campus. I want to show you something." They drove across town and parked in the visitor's lot. The campus was quiet. Most reunion events did not start until the afternoon. Ben walked with Sam along the main quad, past the library, past the old cafeteria, until they reached the engineering building. Red brick, tall windows, ivy up one side. Ben sat down on the stone steps. Sam sat beside him. Ben pointed up at a window on the 3rd floor. "That was my workshop. Right up there." Sam looked. "What did you do in there?" "I learned how to build things that don't fall down." Sam thought about this. Then he pulled a paper airplane from his jacket pocket, pre-folded, ready, and launched it toward the 3rd floor window. It caught a gust, spiraled left, and landed in the grass. "Almost," Sam said. "Almost counts," Ben said. They sat on the steps for a while, not talking, just watching the morning move across the quad. 50 yards away, walking from the east gate toward the provost's office, Hannah Porter saw them. She did not stop. She did not call out. But she slowed her pace just enough to watch. The man on the stone steps, the boy beside him, the paper airplane in the grass. The way he sat at the boy's height. The way he did not rush. She walked on, but the image stayed. That afternoon, in a conference room in the Alumni Center, Greg Loomis was running the final rehearsal for the evening gala. He had a laptop open to a slideshow titled Class of 2011. Where are they now? Each slide had a photograph, a name, and a professional title. He clicked through them one by one, adjusting the order. Frank was there. He had volunteered for the setup committee weeks ago, before he understood what Greg was building. Frank looked over Greg's shoulder. The last slide was Ben's. The photograph was from college, young, sharp-jawed, holding a drafting pencil. Next to it, in white letters on a blue background, it said Ben Cooper, shop teacher, Durham High. Nothing about Meridian. Nothing about the bridge. Nothing about the 400 lives. "Greg." Frank kept his voice level. Ben worked at Meridian for 11 years. He was a lead structural engineer. Greg did not look up from the screen. "I'm showing where people are now. That's the whole concept. Where are they now?" He clicked to the next slide. "It's not personal, Frank. It's just facts." Frank stared at the edit button on the toolbar. He could reach over and change it. He could type the truth onto that slide right now. But Greg was holding the laptop. Greg was running the show. Greg had the microphone and the venue and the crowd. And Frank had a promise he had made to his best friend 7 years ago, when Ben had looked him in the eye and said, "Don't." Frank called Ben from the parking lot. "He's got a slideshow. You're the last slide. Shop teacher. Nothing else." Silence on the line. Then Ben's voice, steady and unbroken. "I'm not hiding, Frank. I came to see old friends. Not to perform." Frank hung up. He sat in his car for a long time with the engine off. Late Saturday afternoon. A small restaurant 2 blocks from campus, red brick, low ceiling, candles on the tables. Not a reunion event, just a handful of friends who had found each other's phone numbers and decided to eat together before the gala. Ben sat at the end of the table with Frank on his left and 2 other classmates across from him. He was laughing. It was the first time all weekend anyone had seen him laugh like that. Open, easy, without guarding the edges. He told a story about a student who had accidentally glued a birdhouse to the workbench, and the whole table cracked up, and for a few minutes he was just a man among friends. Hannah walked in at 6. She had been invited by the university president as part of the donor schedule, a casual dinner, off the record. She was seated at a nearby table with 2 faculty members. The restaurant was small enough that conversations crossed tables, and when Ben's group erupted in laughter again, Hannah looked over. She caught Ben's eye. He raised his glass slightly, an acknowledgement, not an invitation. She raised hers back. Across the dinner, they traded small exchanges. He asked, from across the gap, whether she had finished the journal. She said the ending had disappointed her. He said endings usually do. She said maybe she had been reading the wrong ones. Their words were light, but the cadence was not. Each sentence came a little slower than normal conversation, as though neither of them wanted to arrive at the next one too quickly. At one point, the tables fell into separate conversations, his friends arguing about college football, her table mates discussing faculty appointments, and in the gap, Ben and Hannah looked at each other at the same time. It lasted longer than it should have, longer than either of them had planned. She looked away first. He picked up his water glass and drank without tasting it. Greg arrived at 7:30 with 3 people from his office, all wearing suits that matched. He stood at the center of the room and raised a glass. To the ones who made it. His eyes found Ben's across the room. The toast landed exactly where it was aimed. Ben did not react. He set his fork down, folded his napkin, and continued his conversation with Frank. When the dinner broke up, Hannah walked to the exit. She passed behind Greg's table. He was leaning toward one of his colleagues, voice low but not low enough. "Wait till tonight. I've got a whole slide for Cooper. Shop teacher. The crowd's gonna love it." The colleague laughed. Hannah did not stop walking. She did not turn around, but her jaw tightened, and her hand on the door handle pressed harder than it needed to. Saturday afternoon, 3 hours before the gala. Hannah Porter was inside the engineering building on the 3rd floor, walking alongside the department chair during a donor walkthrough. They passed laboratories, design studios, a room full of 3D printers humming behind glass. She nodded and asked the right questions and did not think about the man from the restaurant. Then the hallway opened into a corridor lined with bronze plaques. The department's most distinguished alumni, arranged by year. The chair gestured vaguely. "Our wall of distinction. Every fellowship recipient since 1984. Hannah walked along the wall without stopping. 2008, 2009, 2010. Then she stopped. 2011. A bronze plaque, polished, mounted at eye level. Benjamin Cooper, Vanguard Fellowship, Class of 2011. Outstanding contribution to structural engineering. She read it again. Benjamin. Ben. The wallet. The coffee shop. The paper airplane. Excuse me, she said to the chair. She took out her phone. Her fingers moved fast. Benjamin Cooper Meridian Aerospace Vanguard. The results loaded in 2 seconds. The first article. Meridian Aerospace Engineer identifies fatal structural defect in Vanguard Bridge. Estimated 400 lives at risk. A photograph of a younger Ben in a dark suit, standing beside the model of a bridge she recognized. She recognized it because she owned it. Porter Ventures had acquired the Vanguard Bridge's operational contract in 2019. She had signed the paperwork herself. She had signed it because the structural assessment report was the cleanest, safest evaluation in her entire infrastructure portfolio. Perfect score. Zero risk. And now she was reading why. She scrolled further. A second article. Meridian eliminates advanced projects division. A line about restructuring, a line about cost cutting, nothing about the engineer who had saved 400 lives and then disappeared. Hannah sat down on the wooden bench in the hallway. The department chair was still talking somewhere behind her. She did not hear him. She was staring at the plaque and the phone and the photograph of a man she had shared a table with last night. A man whose work she had literally built a division of her company on, and she had not known. Nobody at that reunion had known. Nobody except the friend who had promised not to say. She put the phone away. She stood up. She looked out the third-floor window and saw, far below in the parking lot, an old Ford pickup truck pulling into a spot at the far edge. 3 blocks away, Ben was getting ready. He stood in front of the bathroom mirror in the hotel room, knotting his tie. Sam sat on the bed behind him, legs swinging off the edge. "You nervous?" Sam asked. "No," Ben said. He was not lying. He was not nervous. He was something else, something he did not have a word for, the feeling of walking into a room where everyone has already decided who you are. Sam hopped off the bed and walked to his father. "Here." He reached up and straightened the tie. His fingers were small, and the knot came out crooked, slightly left of center, the wide end too short. Ben looked at it in the mirror. He left it exactly as it was. He knelt down. "I'll be back by 10. Mrs. Patterson's coming to stay with you." "Okay." He kissed the top of Sam's head, grabbed his keys, and walked out. At 8:15, the gala was in full motion. The Alumni Center ballroom had been transformed. Round tables with white linen, a stage with a podium, a projector screen, a sound system. Champagne circulated on trays. The lights were warm, and the noise was the noise of 200 people performing confidence for each other. Ben walked in alone. Vest, no blazer. Rolled cuffs. The blue tie, crooked. Frank met him at the door, and they sat together at a table near the back corner, far from the stage. Hannah arrived at 8:20. Dark blazer, no jewelry except a thin silver watch. Her hair was down. She was seated at the VIP table near the front. Donors, board members, the provost. She sat down, unfolded her napkin, and let her eyes move across the room until they found the back corner. Ben was there. He was listening to Frank say something. He had no idea she had spent the last 3 hours learning who he was. At 8:45, Greg Loomis took the stage. Spotlight. Microphone. The projector lit up behind him. "Class of 2011, where are they now?" He began. Slide after slide. Doctors. Lawyers. Executives. Each one got a brief introduction and a round of applause. Greg was good at this. The timing, the pauses, the way he made each title sound like a verdict. The room was with him. They clapped. They cheered. They raised their glasses. He saved the last slide. Ben's face appeared on the screen. The old college photograph. 22 years old and full of something the room had forgotten. Next to it, in white letters, Ben Cooper, shop teacher, Durham High. Greg grinned. Not everyone can keep up with the rest of us. But somebody has to teach the kids how to sand wood. Right, Ben? He looked directly at him. "No offense, buddy. We need guys like you too." The room laughed. 200 people. Not all of them meant it. Some looked uncomfortable. But the sound was the same. A single wave of laughter aimed at one man standing by his chair in the back of the room. Ben did not laugh. He did not look down. He stood with his glass of water, his crooked tie, his calloused hands, and he looked straight at the stage. Not with anger. Not with hurt. With something quieter than both. Then the sound came. A chair scraping against marble. The VIP table. Hannah Porter pushed her chair back and stood. The provost beside her turned to look. She did not look back. She stepped away from the table and walked. Not around the edge. Not along the wall. Through the center. Through the crowd. Her heels hit the marble floor. 1, 2, 3. Steady, unhurried. Each step as deliberate as a sentence. People turned. Table by table, the laughter died. By the time she was halfway across the room, the only sound was her footsteps and the hum of the projector. She stopped 3 feet in front of Ben. She did not look at Greg. She did not look at the screen. She looked at Ben. "I've been looking for you," she said. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just clear. Then she turned to face the room. This man found a stress fracture in a load-bearing node on the Vanguard bridge when every automated system cleared it. He did the analysis by hand. His work saved 400 lives and $340 million. She paused. "My company acquired that bridge because of his engineering." It's the safest structure in our portfolio, and his name is on a plaque on the third floor of this building. She looked at the screen behind Greg, shop teacher, Durham High, and then back at the crowd. That's also true, and there's nothing small about it. Silence. The kind that fills a room from the floor up. Greg stood on the stage holding the microphone, and nobody in the room was looking at him anymore. The silence lasted 5 full seconds. Then Frank Jessup stood up from the back table. He did not raise his voice. He spoke to the people around him, but the room was quiet enough that everyone heard. I was his roommate. I've known the whole time. He asked me not to tell anyone. Frank's voice cracked, not from nerves, but from the weight of having carried it. So I didn't. Murmurs rippled through the room. Heads turning. People leaning toward each other. Someone at a middle table said, too loud, he did that. Then the room looked at Ben. He did not step onto the stage. He did not take the microphone. He stood right where he was, back table, crooked tie, glass of water, and he spoke, quietly. But the room had already gone silent for him. I left Meridian because I lost someone. And after that, the work I'd been doing, the calculations, the models, the conference rooms, none of it felt like mine anymore. He paused. I came back to Durham and I took a job at the high school. And on my first day, I stood in front of 20 kids who didn't know anything about bridges or contracts or engineering awards. They just needed someone to show them how a dovetail joint works. Another pause. That felt real. So I stayed. He looked at Frank, then at Hannah, then at no one. I didn't come here tonight to prove anything. I came because my friend asked 3 times. And that was enough. Somewhere in the middle of the room, someone began to clap. One person, then another. It was not a standing ovation. It was not a movie moment. It was 30, maybe 40 people, rising to their feet one at a time, the way conviction moves, slowly, and only after the shame has had time to land. Hannah stood beside Ben, not touching, not speaking, just there. Her shoulder was 4 inches from his, close enough that he could feel the warmth but not the contact. She looked straight ahead. He looked straight ahead, and the space between them said more than any declaration could have. On the stage, Greg Loomis set the microphone on the podium, turned off the projector, and walked down the side stairs without saying a word. No one watched him go. He did not speak to anyone on the way out. By the time the applause faded, he was already in the parking lot, and the ballroom did not notice. The gala thinned out over the next hour. People came to Ben's table, some to shake his hand, some to apologize for laughing, some just to stand nearby without knowing what to say. He was gracious with all of them. He did not hold the laughter against anyone. He did not bring it up. He talked about the reunion, about campus, about how the oak trees on the quad were the same as they had always been. At 10, Ben said goodnight to Frank and walked out the side exit toward the parking lot. The air was cold, October in Durham, the kind of cold that smells like leaves and wood smoke. His truck was parked at the far edge, under a streetlight. He heard footsteps on the gravel behind him. He stopped, turned. Hannah was walking toward him. Her blazer was open, her arms crossed against the chill. I should have asked your last name, she said. That first morning at the coffee shop. I would have known sooner. Ben looked at her for a long moment. If you'd known sooner, you wouldn't have sat next to me just because you wanted to. The words landed between them. She did not argue. He was right, and they both knew it. She smiled, small, barely there, the kind of smile that happens before a person decides to let it. Good night, Ben. Good night, Hannah. She turned and walked toward the hotel. He stood by his truck, keys in hand, and watched her go. At the edge of the lot, just before the path curved behind the building, she looked back. Just once. Just long enough to make sure he was still watching. He was. Sunday morning came in quiet. October light, low and gold, through the kitchen window. Ben stood at the counter pouring coffee. Sam was still asleep in the next room. The house smelled like it always did, sawdust and dish soap, and whatever the oak floorboards released when the sun warmed them. Ben's phone buzzed 3 times in a row. Text messages from classmates. People he had not spoken to in years. I had no idea, man. I'm really sorry about last night. Respect, Cooper. He read them. He did not reply yet. Not out of resentment. He simply did not need their words this morning the way they needed to give them. Frank called. Greg checked out early. Left before sunrise. Nobody saw him. Ben took a breath. Okay. That's it. Just okay. What else would it be? Frank paused. Fair enough. At 9, Ben walked Sam to the coffee shop on Broad Street. Their regular spot. Sam slid into the booth and immediately began folding a napkin into an airplane. Ben ordered 2 orange juices and a black coffee and sat across from his son. The bell above the door rang. Hannah walked in. She stood just inside the door for a moment, scanning the room the way a person does when they are looking for one specific thing. She found it. The corner booth, the man and the boy, the napkin being folded into wings. She walked over. This seat taken? Ben pulled out the chair beside him. She sat down. For the first time, they faced each other knowing exactly who the other was. No surface labels. No accidental meetings. Just Ben Cooper, the engineer who had saved a bridge, and Hannah Porter, the woman who had built a company on it. She told him about the acquisition, the due diligence reports, the structural assessment. Every number pointed to one name, she said. Yours. I just didn't have a face to go with it. He told her about leaving. Not the corporate version, the real one. The months after losing his wife, when the equations on his screen stopped looking like math and started looking like shapes without meaning. The day Meridian eliminated his division and he felt nothing. The drive back to Durham. The first morning in the shop classroom, surrounded by raw lumber and 20 kids who needed him to be exactly where he was. That felt more useful than anything I'd built before, he said. No self-pity, no regret, just the fact of it. Hannah nodded. Then she said something careful. Porter Ventures has been trying to locate the original Vanguard engineer for 3 years. We have new infrastructure projects, bridges, tunnels. We need the kind of analysis that doesn't come from software. She paused. I'm not asking you to go back. Then what are you asking? I'm asking you to come forward. Ben was quiet. He looked at Sam, who had finished the napkin airplane and was testing its wings against the table edge. He looked at Hannah. I'm not leaving teaching, he said. I know. But forward, I can do forward. Sam looked up from the napkin airplane, holding it by the nose, and extended it toward Hannah. You want to see it fly? Hannah laughed. Not the composed, professional laugh she used in boardrooms. A real one, sudden, unguarded, the kind that changes a face completely. She looked at Sam, then at Ben. I'd love to. Sam launched it. The napkin airplane caught the draft from the heating vent and sailed across the table, landing in Hannah's lap. She picked it up and examined it. The sharp folds, the intentional asymmetry, one wing slightly longer than the other. He gets that from you, she said to Ben. Ben looked at her. She looked at him. The look lasted longer than any of the ones before, longer than the coffee shop, longer than the restaurant, longer than the parking lot. And this time, neither of them turned away first. 2 weeks later, the October light in Durham had gone amber, and the oaks along the campus quad had turned the color of old copper. Ben was still teaching shop class. Every morning, 8:15, sawdust and pencils and the sound of a table saw warming up. But on the desk in his home office, next to the stack of grading and the jar of wood shavings Sam had given him for his birthday, there was a new laptop. The screen, when he opened it at night, showed structural drawings, load distribution models, stress analyses, the geometry of things designed to hold. He had accepted a part-time consulting position with Porter Ventures. Remote. Project-based. He reviewed structural assessments, flagged risks, wrote reports that read the way his old ones had. Meticulous, cautious, certain. He did not leave teaching. He did not go back. He came forward. On a Thursday afternoon, Sam ran through the front door with his backpack bouncing and his shoes untied. He dropped everything in the hallway. Dad, Mrs. Cole said my airplane flew the farthest in the whole class. Ben looked up from the kitchen table. Show me. Sam pulled a folded sheet from his pocket. White paper, sharp creases, the left wing 2 millimeters longer than the right, on purpose. He launched it across the kitchen. It sailed past the stove, past the window, and landed on the counter next to the coffee maker. Perfect arc. Not bad, Ben said. Not bad. That was perfect. Ben smiled. Almost perfect. Almost counts, Sam said. The doorbell rang. Ben walked to the front door and opened it. Hannah stood on the porch. No blazer. A knit sweater, sleeves pushed to the elbows, hair tied low. No lipstick. She looked like a person who had not come here to be impressive. Board meeting, she said. He leaned against the doorframe. The board meeting was last week. She held his gaze. I know. He did not invite her in. He stepped out. They walked. The streets of Durham in late October, the sidewalks covered in leaves, the light coming in sideways through the trees. They walked toward campus without discussing it, the way feet go to familiar places. They crossed the main quad, the same path they had walked that first Friday, when she was the woman in the gray coat, and he was the man who had dropped his wallet. The oaks were fuller now, the shadows longer. Sam had stayed behind. He stood at the kitchen window, watching his father and the woman walk away down the tree-lined street. He did not know everything. He did not need to. He knew enough. The way his dad's shoulders were looser, the way he walked without checking his phone, the way the woman matched his pace as though she had been walking beside him for years. Sam picked up the paper airplane from the counter, set it on the windowsill, nose pointed out, and went to finish his homework. On the quad, Ben and Hannah reached the fork in the path. The same fork, left toward the hotel, right toward the parking lot. Last time, she had gone left, and he had gone right, and neither of them had known what they were walking away from. This time, they both went straight. They did not hold hands. They did not make promises. They walked, and their arms swung close enough that the backs of their fingers brushed. Once, then again, and neither of them moved away. Last time, Ben said, "You didn't look back." Hannah kept walking. Last time, I didn't know what I'd be looking at. The path stretched ahead of them, long, straight, shaded by oaks that had stood there longer than either of them had been alive. They walked it together, no destination, no agenda, just the sound of two sets of footsteps falling into the same rhythm on the same stretch of pavement. The longest walk she had ever taken was 32 feet of marble. The longest walk he had ever taken was 3 years of silence. And the shortest, the one that mattered, was the one they were taking right now, side by side, with nowhere in particular to go.